I have the most important thing to tell you now. This is my story. So my story begins with my parents. My father was born in Eastern Europe, in Romania, in 1905. My mother was born in Eastern Europe. At that time, the country was called Czechoslovakia, and she was born there in 1915. And my parents were both very religious Orthodox Jews. So you may know, of course, that the Orthodox Jews are really the strictest Jews that seek to follow all the laws in the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, and all the laws that God gave to the Jewish people. And my parents left Europe in 1940 because of one person, and his name was Adolf Hitler. If my parents stayed in Europe, they definitely would have been murdered. They would never have survived. People that stayed where they were from died. Everyone that stayed perished. 11 months after my father left Romania, the Nazis came to his region in eastern Romania. They gathered 10,000 Jews, and over a 2-week period, they murdered all 10,000 and buried them in a mass grave. I've been there and I've seen it. 2 of these people, 2 of the 10,000, were my grandparents, my father's parents. My father had a sister. She was taken to a concentration camp and never heard from again. So like a lot of Jews, they had to get out of Europe. And like a lot of Jews, they ended up in South America. There were a few countries that had an open immigration for Jews because they had heard about a situation in Europe. And one of them was a country right on the equator called Ecuador. And so my parents lived in Quito, Ecuador, the capital, from 1940 to 1950. My brother was born there. My sister was born there. My mother was pregnant with me in the spring of 1950. And my father filled out paperwork to bring his family to the United States. He got permission. They came through New York City, and I was born 5 months later in October of 1950. And as you can imagine, I was raised in a very, very, very religious Jewish home. My grandparents died for being Jewish. My parents suffered for being Jewish, and I was instilled with everything about my Jewish heritage. My parents sent me to public school during the day, and then I went to school in the synagogue. And it was called Hebrew school. The Old Testament, 5 books of Moses are written in Hebrew. You go to Israel, you speak Hebrew. So I went to Hebrew school, and I learned Hebrew. I learned all about being Jewish. I learned hundreds of prayers. And I went to Hebrew school 5 days a week for 8 years. I cannot tell you how important this was. This was very important to me. 5 days a week for 8 years. I started when I was 8 until I was 16. So all those years of growing up had a tremendous impact on me. All my friends were Jewish. All my relatives were Jewish. I remember I'd wake up in the morning and pray for a half an hour in Hebrew, putting on the tefillin, if you know the tefillin. And from Deuteronomy chapter 6, bind my law around your arm and around the frontlets of your eyes. We recited this morning at the other congregation this morning. So for many years I laid tefillin. And when I was about 11 or 12, something occurred. And that is I began to develop a very foul mouth. I could lie to my teachers. I could lie to my parents. I could curse very easily. I was very religious in the synagogue, and these prayers meant a lot to me. And I realized it was easy to be religious. And then an hour later, I'm swearing and cursing and lying, and that was easy. It was easy for me to be religious when I had to, and it was easy for me to be very irreligious when I wanted to. Sad. Then when I was 17, I was accepted in the famous music school in New York City called the Juilliard School. I was there for 5 years and got a bachelor's and a master's in piano. And there I met 3 students who called themselves born-again Christians. Well, I never heard that term. I had no idea what that meant. But there was something about them that was quite unusual. I'd see one of them having a sandwich in the cafeteria. I'd see another one of them taking a break from practicing. And whenever I saw them individually, they were always reading the Bible. The Bible. I mean, this is not a school of religion. It's a school of music. And these were highly respected students. I mean, these were Juilliard students, very talented, highly respected. And when they got together, all they did was talk about Jesus. Jesus said this, and Jesus did this, and why did Jesus say this, and why did Jesus do this? They never mentioned a church. There was never any mention. They never mentioned the C word. Christianity was always Jesus and Jesus and Jesus and Jesus and Jesus. Yeshua. Well, they heard I was a religious Jew, and they asked me two questions. They asked me if I'd ever read the New Testament, and I told them, nope, not a word. I was told the New Testament was not a Jewish book. You'd never find a New Testament in our home. I had no idea what was in it. I never saw one. I never read one. I never touched one. Zero knowledge. Nothing. They asked me if I thought if Yeshua was the Messiah, Mashiach. And I said, no, he's not the salvation for Jewish people. But again, I was very moral. I didn't want to do anything to hurt my parents. My parents literally almost died for me. They sacrificed for me. So I didn't want to shame them. So I never drank alcohol. To this day, I still don't know what a beer tastes like. My choice. Never was drunk. Never took drugs. I lived in New York City from 1968 to 1973. That was the height of the Vietnam War. That was the height of this group called the hippies. All I can say is this. If you lived in New York City, I was at 71st Street and Broadway. That's known as Uptown Manhattan. It's not what drugs you wanted, it's how much drugs you wanted. There were drugs everywhere. There were drugs everywhere. Never had premarital sex. So even though I was so moral on the outside, no sex, no drugs, no drinking, my friend, I'm going to tell you, I was very, very, very immoral. Immoral. You know where? Right here. Listen. I knew that I was not on the inside the way I could appear on the outside. I could do many, many Jewish things, but it never affected me on the inside. I was very moral. I was very religious, but not changed. The same foul-mouthed, dirty-minded, self-centered, egotistical person at 20, at 18, at 16, and 14. Nothing changed about me except I was getting older. The same issues, the same sins, the same problems. So I made a big decision. I said, well, if I want to know about Yeshua, I said, I'm going to read this book, the New Testament. And that was a big step for a Jew to read the New Testament. And I didn't want to talk to a rabbi or these friends, or no one's going to tell me what I'm reading. Now, when I was a student at Juilliard, I used to practice for 10 hours a day. Now, let me tell you, that's not a lie or an exaggeration. I did not sit at the piano for 9 hours and 45 minutes. I sat every day at the piano for 10 full hours. I never left Juilliard until I completely practiced for 10 full hours a day. I started to read the New Testament, and my whole life came to a stop. I was absolutely shocked when I read this book. For the first time in my life since I started piano as a 9-year-old boy, I completely stopped practicing. They had given me a little pocket New Testament. And they said, well, Sam, if you read this book, start in this book called The Gospel of John. Never heard of it. So I opened up the book. There it is. So here is a man, Yeshua, who said of himself, I am the light of the world. Wow. Are you kidding me? You know, as an Orthodox Jew, the first thing that came to my mind was in Genesis and Bereshit, where God says, let there be light, because Jews are taught God is light. There's an eternal light, because it's God who is light. And here this man says, I'm the light. Wow. Here's a man, Yeshua, who said of himself, I am the bread of life. Here's a man, Yeshua, who said, no person comes to God, my Father, except through me. He who has the Son of God, Yeshua, has life. He who does not have the Son of God, Yeshua, does not have life. I am the vine, you are the branches. Without me, you can do nothing. No, no, no. Without God, I can do nothing. Oh, no, Sam. No, Sam. Without me, you can do nothing. Sam, you want to know God? You want to serve God? You want to please God? You know me. You serve me. You please me. You believe in God? Believe also in me. The same faith you have in the Almighty is what you're going to have, your faith in me. No difference. Well, we're in a beautiful gathering here this evening. Let me tell you what I said to myself, and I appreciate, don't laugh, because it was pretty traumatic. This was traumatic. I said, this man is beyond the pale. This man is is crazy. This man is an egomaniac. You know who Moses to the Jews? Moses never said he was the light of the world. Abraham, Abraham, Isaac, Yaakov, they never said they were the light of the world. I was shocked at what Yeshua kept saying about who he was. So I was going to throw away the book. I'm going to go practice. And at that moment I said to myself, if this person, Yeshua, if he is who he says he is, let me repeat that again. If he is who he says he is, I may be making the biggest mistake of my life throwing this book away. I better listen to him. And then Yeshua said he came for sinners. I was not a sinner. I was very moral. I was very religious. I spent my whole life looking good for God. I was on God's side. But Yeshua said he came to bring forgiveness, and he said he came to change us on the inside. He called it a new heart, a new birth, a new life. A spiritual heart, a spiritual birth, a spiritual life. So I've played concerts in 61 different countries. You name a country, I can probably tell you I've been there. All through Asia, South America, countries in Africa, all through Europe. I've been to Cuba twice. I gave 2 tours of concerts in Cuba, totaling 28 concerts. I went to Cuba when you couldn't go to Cuba. And let me tell you what I've learned. My friend, I don't care if your skin color is blue or red or pink or black or white. If you think there's a difference in people's skin color, you're highly mistaken, because there's not a smidgen of difference. It doesn't matter if you say you're a Christian, a Hindu, a Muslim, a Buddhist, because there's no difference. None. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent Party, Communist Party, Labor Party, Socialist Party. No difference. Doesn't matter what language you speak. It doesn't matter what country you're from, because I'm telling you this reality. This is the reality. This is the reality in this world. Every person in this world, which now numbers 8 billion, and every person in this room, we are experts at hiding things. Hiding things. Hiding things. You know what's the first thing man did when he disobeyed God? He hid. He hid. Before he even uttered a moan or a word. And we have figured out a million ways of how to hide things. You can hide things from your husband, your wife, your friends. You can hide things from your boss at work. Hide things from your parents. But my friend, nobody hides anything from this Yeshua. Nobody. Yeshua said that every word you've said, you're going to give an answer. And what you've said in the secret is going to be shouted from the housetop. And get this, he will disclose the things we have done and reveal the motive of our hearts. Let me repeat that again. He will disclose the things we have done and reveal the motive. The motive of our hearts. There's a DVD of your whole life, externally and internally. And even though I was so moral and so religious, I thought I was crafty enough with my tongue and clever enough with my mind that I thought I could hide things from people and God. And on May 21st, 1971, this May will be 52 years, for the first time I prayed to Yeshua HaMashiach. And I'm going to tell you what I said. My name is Sam Rotman. My name is Sam Rotman. And Yeshua, I want you to take over my life. It's very simple. I want you to tell me what to do, and I will not tell you what to do. I told the lies I said. I told the immoral thoughts I had. I told him the curse words I said. I decided I'm not going to hide anything from him. You know something? You don't need to hide anything from Yeshua, because you're not hiding anything. And I decided I'm not going to make any excuses. Do you realize you can come to Yeshua and you don't need to give him an excuse for anything you've ever done in your life? Think of that. You don't need to give him an excuse. In fact, if you give him an excuse, you're complicating it. You're really messing it up. It was a long prayer. I finished praying. I opened up my eyes, and in a billionth of a second, immediately, I knew that Yeshua had completely changed me on the the inside. I mean, I was completely changed. I had a dirty, filthy mouth, and instantly he cleaned it and changed it. I was shocked I stopped cursing. I couldn't form a curse word with my lips if I wanted to. I had a dirty, filthy mind, and instantly he cleaned it and changed it. And I couldn't wake up the next morning, and I thanked him and thanked him and thanked him, and I couldn't wait to get to Juilliard when it opened up at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I went to every practice room that I had a Jewish friend of mine, and I told him I've been changed by the Messiah, and his name is Yeshua. That's all. I've played over 3,200 concerts, and I can tell you, my friend, that all of my concerts are nothing. You know how much nothing is? Nothing compared to having Yeshua HaMashiach. Music's not the most important thing in my life. He is the most important thing in my life, because this is my friend. He is the only person that can change your heart. Young person, senior. Your friends can't change you. Your parents can't change you. The congregation can't change you. The government can't change you. Your husband can't change you. Your wife can't change you. Can I tell you something? You can't change you. You know who the hardest person to live with is? You. But this is the miracle in this world. I'm saying, I'm very, very serious. The miracle in this world is that Yeshua HaMashiach actually changes a human heart. That is absolutely mind-boggling. And he's done it to hundreds and hundreds of millions of people over 2,000 years. And I'm one of them. Little me, I'm one. You know I was Jewish? I was born Jewish. That's the only reason I was Jewish. If I was born in Egypt, or if you was born in Egypt, you'd be a Muslim. Or if you were born in India, or I was born in India, you'd be a Hindu, where I've done concerts. Or Thailand, a Buddhist. It's not a religion, my friend, it's a person. You realize that 99% of the world are born into a religion. Why are you a Catholic? Why are you Jewish? Why are you a Muslim? Why are you a Hindu? I was born. But it's not a religion, it's a person, the central person of human history. Salvation is not what you will ever do for Yeshua. Salvation is everything that Yeshua has already done for you. And I play the piano for him. He gave me the ears to hear the music, the fingers to play the music, the mind to learn the music, the heart to love the music. You know that Yeshua has never missed one of my concerts. I know it sounds very clever or cute, but it's very real. And every time I give a concert here in a congregation or a college, university, or with an orchestra, last Friday I gave a concert, big concert of a Beethoven concerto with an orchestra in Wisconsin. He's always in the front row. And every time I sit down to play, he says, Sam, I'm really looking forward to hearing you play for me this evening. If I could look into your eyes, I would tell you, each one of you, it is worth living for Yeshua HaMashiach. Listen, he's not a joke. He's not a phantom. He's not hocus pocus magic. He's not a curse word. He's not even a nice Christmas story. He is the life and the light of the world. Don't let anything become an excuse to keep you from the amazing life there is in Jesus Christ. Now, I don't always share this. I shared it this morning. My family, for 2,000 years, were Orthodox Jews. You know how I know? They left because of the destruction of the temple. They were Ashkenazi Jews in Europe. And I had my DNA done, and I'm 99.8% Ashkenazi Jew. They told me there's rarely anybody that high. Rarely have they found anyone that high. You realize that? That means my family lived within 100 miles of each other. They didn't marry sisters and brothers, no. But within their own group, they had families and children. I had a million excuses. Don't let anything become an excuse to keep you from the amazing life. People can disappoint you, others, they're not worth it, he's worth it. And you can say like I did, young person, you can give him your name. Yeshua, my name is, tell him your name, and I want you to take over my life, and he will. And forgive me, forgive me, forgive me. I want to tell you, not make an excuse, and he'll forgive you, and be with me and help me and guide me, and you'll be changed. Music gives me a lot of happiness. I'll play about 40,000 notes, but not one note will change me. He changed me, gave me a new life. It's worth living for him. last piece. We'll be done here in 5 minutes. This is a very famous piece by Beethoven called the Turkish March. You've all heard it. Beethoven heard this piece played by some street musicians. He liked it. He wrote it down. This is when he could still hear. And then 20 years later, when he couldn't hear, he remembered how it sounded. And he played the piece and composed the piece. It has this march, and then there's little variations, each having different mood based on the march. And at the end, you have the march again. So it's a very wonderful piece, very almost cute piece, but very creative. This is the famous Turkish March, the last piece tonight by Beethoven. Thank you. Wow, you're so enthusiastic. Have a seat, have a seat. Just for a minute before the pastor comes out. Just for a minute. Have a seat, have a seat. Anybody have a question you'd like to ask me? My life, my music, my social security number? Or, Yes, yeah, no. Yes, ma'am. Right. Yes. Yeah. Uh, yeah. So I always ask that. This is the first or the second question. I've been asked that for 50 years. So I went and shared with my parents. I knew it'd be very difficult. My father's parents died because he was Jewish. They were Jewish, and now the son believes in this Jesus, Yeshua. So I went and told them, and they were very upset, especially my father. He asked me to leave the house, and he said three things to me. You're no longer my son. I never want to hear from you again. And as far as I'm concerned, you're dead. I knew it'd be difficult. I did not hear from my parents for many years. I got married to my wife, who's a believer. They did not come to the wedding. We have 3 children, and I wanted them to enjoy the grandchildren, and I was not going to say anything or aggravate them. No, I was not, nothing. Enjoy. But it was too difficult for my father. My children saw their grandparents, my parents, maybe 3 times in 25 years. In 1995, my father was 89, almost 90. Remember, he was born in 1905. I wanted to visit him in the hospital, and he refused to see me. He died 4 days later, and he did not want me at the funeral, which I respected. So I live in Phoenix, Arizona area. My mother lived in Scottsdale, Arizona, Scottsdale, which is part of Phoenix. So if you know anything about Scottsdale, that's where 95% of the Jews live, in Scottsdale. The synagogues are in Scottsdale, the Jews. So 2 things about my mother. My mother loved classical music. I'm in classical music because of my mother. And my mother's family escaped the Holocaust. Barely. They barely got out. My father lost his family. My mother's family survived. She wanted to reach out to me, but it was too difficult for my father. With the passing of my father, I had a great relationship with my mother. She loved my wife, loved our 3 kids. I did concerts for her every 6 months. But I would now talk with her. I began to read to her in the New Testament. I began to share about prophecies and fulfillment. She always went to shul, to synagogue, every Sabbath. I always asked her, what did the rabbi talk about? So this began in 1995, and on February the 12th, 2007, 12 years later, my 91-year-old mother came to the salvation of believing in Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen is right. It's worth living for him. It was absolutely remarkable. And since then, she's gone to be with him. I spoke at her funeral, and I said, Mother, you're now in the bosom of Father Abraham. You know that Yeshua said to a Jew, that's what heaven is in Matthew's gospel. So I knew it'd be very difficult with my father. It was very difficult. It was very difficult. But, but he said, if you do not love me more than your mother, father, and sister and brother, you're not worthy of me. Someone else? Any question? Anything you'd like to know? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so my brother, actually, I was able to share with him many times. He was a nominal practicing Jew. He was not religious, but he would go, almost like I say, a 3-day Jew, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Pesach, Unfortunately, he developed cancer and passed away. He was almost 9 years older than me. So we were close, but he passed away about 2 years ago. My sister is an atheist. She's Jewish. Oh, she's Jewish. But she has no interest. This is all a bunch of nonsense and hogwash. But I still have a connection with her and, pray for her. And her husband has some health issues, and I call up and want to know how he's doing and how she's doing and things. So she appreciates that. But, I just still pray. Yeah. It's very difficult with my sister because my sister saw how much it was difficult for my father. And my sister has always had a very bad attitude toward me because she saw me as the one that created so much sadness and hurt for my parents. So, but I pray for her. Yeah. Someone else? Yes, ma'am. Say that again. What was the first thing you said? What was what? Right. Yeah. 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 So, let me share a very interesting statistic. I'm not trying to evade the question, but the statistic. There was a statistic done of talking to people who were very, very religious Jews growing up. And then when they came to Yeshua, what happened? And they found out that many very religious Jews began to not have the necessity of continuing practicing all their past religiosity as religious Jews after they came to the Messiah. They found out that people who were not religious at all, not religious, zero religious, had no interest in the Bible, in Judaism, but they were Jewish, you understand? When they came to the Messiah, oh boy, they wanted to now make up for what was lost. And they now wanted to do many Jewish things, realizing the heritage that they did. I fit in the first category. I was very religious, but to be honest with you, now that I have the Messiah, I don't feel the need, I'm just, me personally, right? The need to be as Jewish or devoted in that sense. Let me say this. I say this very humbly, but very, to me, as I look back, many things in my Jewish faith were pictures, wonderful pictures, true pictures, amazing pictures. But to me, when I came to the Messiah, who is life, I'll tell you, I have life now. I have life. And the pictures are not as alluring to me anymore because, man, I got it now. Almost like the Apostle Paul. He said, these things, this is past for the unfathomable riches of having Messiah, because he changed me. He gave me life. He has forgiven me. He is alive for me. You understand? I. All you need to do is read John 13 to John 17, which is Jesus' Passover sermon, and see how many times he uses the word I. I'm it. I'm it. This is it. I'm it. The whole Passover is about me. You were once in darkness. You were in the land of Egypt. You were once serving idols. And what does the New Testament say? We've now gone from idols to the living and true God. We were once in darkness. Now we're in light. We once served sin. Now righteousness. That's all Passover language. All I'm saying is that you understand, because he has made the difference. That's it. That's it. That's it. Yeah. Does that help to answer a little bit? Okay, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. Yeah. Now, if I play with an orchestra or something, can't stop a concert and say, I want to tell people about Jesus for 20 minutes. But, I try to, did I talk about this morning about how I got into Cuba? And, yeah. Oh, okay. So you were a planted question. So how did I get into Cuba? I knew a man who heard me play in the Dominican Republic, and he knew people in Cuba. And he wanted to say, if you want to come to Cuba, I said, well, sure. I share my faith. It's a communist country. It's a very oppressive country. And he said, well, I can see about if we can get you into Cuba. So I got accepted by the government to come to Cuba, because, they wouldn't have let me in, because I play classical music. If I played Christian music, oh boy, this guy's, but because it's classical music, they saw me as a cultural asset, culturally. But they said, Mr. Rotman you can go on his website, you can look at him, he has a strong faith in Jesus Christ. Of course, there's a Catholic church in Cuba, in Jesus Christ. And he shares just his personal story. And if he can allow to share that, he will come and he'll play a concert. Oh, he'll play a concert. They agreed to it. What got me into Cuba was classical music. And in every concert, I gave my whole testimony, which with the translator was long. But, and the places were packed. And they had agents at every concert. At every concert I gave, they had everyone to verify that I was just, they said, as long as he does it in the hall, in the concert, not outside in the park, not, So I didn't. I mean, you have to be wise. As serpents harmless as, I had to keep my nose clean. I didn't do anything to try to aggravate them. If I tried anything, they kicked me out immediately. And then I came back again 3 years later and gave another 14 concerts. No problem. 28 testimonies. And some people came to the Lord. People, because I heard some people in Cuba came to the Lord. Yeah. Anyone else? Any question? Yes, last one.
What was the first piece that you played by Rotman?
The first piece, maybe the Prelude in C sharp minor. You know this? That's the Prelude in B minor. I can write it down for you. Opus 32, number 10. Opus 32. Okay, I thought the first piece I ever played by Rachmaninoff in my life. I've learned 1,100 pieces, so I've learned a lot of Rachmaninoff. Yeah. Okay, thank you for clarifying it. Yeah. Well, I have a table in the back, and in my table I have three things. I have Beethoven recording. That's my favorite. It has the whole Moonlight Sonata. Powerful. It's my favorite recording. Then I also have a recording of Debussy. It has Clair de Lune. You listen to it and all the stress goes out of you. You will be a puddle of water in the living room. Very delicate. And then my whole testimony is there in the back as well. So what I shared tonight, it's a DVD. You watch it. You see Hitler, concentration camp. You see my upbringing. It's a lot of talking and some excerpts. 2 is all music, 1 is my testimony. And they're $15 each, there's no tax, and the autograph is free. And as I said, about 20 years ago I gave a concert, and tonight I said the autograph is $15 and the CD is free. And a man said, I'd like a CD with no autograph. Well, it's been a joy. I was at the other congregation this morning, and now here this evening, and some of the friends came again here again. And thanks for having me. I hope it was a blessing, and I know they're going to take an offering. I'll play you a famous piece by Mozart. I do this for the kids. You've all heard this piece. Mozart. For you, and you. There. Okay. Yes.
I have one other question.
A question
Okay.
from the rabbi.
Okay, where do you live?
I live in Phoenix, Arizona.
So you're in Phoenix, Arizona?
Yes.
Because I was going to say, if you were closer, like in Ohio, I was going to ask, I know that you don't really follow like the Jewish traditions, but I was going to ask you to come here every weekend.
Okay.
Okay?
Sure. And I can do a concert every weekend.
And I wanted to say just today that...
So I know Jonathan Burness.
You do?
Oh, yeah, he's in Phoenix. I've been on his TV show.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're actually friends with somebody that works just under him with missions in Africa.
Yeah. So I know Jonathan very well, and he's had me and interviewed me, and because he's in Phoenix.
He's wonderful too.
Oh yeah,
he
he's
loves
a wonderful
Jonathan.
brother. Yeah.
So, but I was going to say today we learned about so in the church, there are deacons, and so we had a very short message, and we were comparing that it's deacons and shamash. And we know that the shamash is a role in the synagogue, but shamash means servant. And I just want to say how much it is encouraged us and just how much it's blessed us, because we see how Jesus, how Yeshua is the model shamash, but he has made you a shamash for the kingdom. So
I try to be a servant, and I try to be low maintenance.
yes, he has been very low maintenance. So we're going to take a love offering, and then we're going to pray for you afterwards. Okay.
If they write a check, you're going to say?
Yes, if you're going to write a check, if you could write it directly to Sam Rotman, Rotman, and then we're going to make sure, I'd like to taking account of it. So we're going to pass the baskets, or I'll ask. There we go.